Yu the Great controlled the flood. Yu the Great, his name was Wenming. Yu's father was Gun, a descendant of the Yellow Emperor. He was the most famous flood control hero in ancient China. According to legend, in ancient times, the people made a big water, boundless, submerged the crops, submerged the mountains, submerged the people's houses, make people miserable. Emperor Yao looked at the displacement of the people, the heart is very unbearable, so called his ministers, said, now you elect 1. To control the people for a long time to the disaster of the great water. So the ministers and the chiefs of the tribes selected Gun. Yao did not think Gun could be trusted, but there was no one more suitable for him, so he assigned Gun the task of flood control for the time being. However, having been pushed into this position, Gun bravely undertook the task. He had controlled the flood for 9 years without making a single contribution, and the only way he could do that was to get clods of earth put in to stop the flood, which was obviously not going to work. Seeing that the flood could not be controlled, Gun would not worry about it, but neglect his duty and neglect his work all day long. When Emperor Shun came to power, the flood was still rampant. He exiled Gun, who had neglected his duty, to Yu Mountain, intending to elect a new person who could control the flood. One of his lieutenants recommended the son of Gun, Yu the Great. After examining him, Emperor Shun found that Yu was not only frugal but also down to earth, which was very different from his father, so he entrusted Yu with the task of controlling the waters. Yu knew, Shun did not blame me for his father's fault, so I must do something. At that time, Yu the Great had only been married for 4 days. His wife Tu Shan, a virtuous woman, consented to her husband's visit. Yu said goodbye to his beloved wife in tears and set out on his journey. Yu led Boyi, Haoji, and a group of assistants, who traveled far and wide through the mountains and rivers of the Central Plains at that time, and left their footprints in the poor and remote places. Yu the Great felt that his father had failed to complete the great task of flood control, and that it was in his hands to accomplish it. He saw countless people along the way are struggling in the flood. He again and again in front of those displaced people shed their tears, and when it comes to water control, acquaintances and strangers will offer him the most precious things. Of course, he will not accept these things, but he felt the people's affection is too strong, which also doubled his determination and confidence. Yu held the measuring line in his left hand and the rules in his right hand, and he measured wherever he went. He learned the lesson of his father's blocking method and invented a new method of dredging water. The key point was to dredge the channel so that water could flow smoothly east to the sea. He also found that the Longmen Pass was too narrow to pass through the flood season. Also found the Yellow River siltation. Water is not smooth, so Yu was bold and resolute and changed blocking to thinning, to dredge the river, widen the fjord, and allow the flood water to pass through more quickly. Yu adopted the principle of water control must be based on water, and the water will go down and lead it to the sea. High on the chisel, low on channeling water control thought. According to the priority, an order of treatment was established, starting in the vicinity of the capital and then spreading to other areas. 9. Whenever Yu found a place in need of treatment, he would go to various tribes to mobilize the masses to carry out the construction. Whenever the Water Conservancy project started, he worked with the people, eating and sleeping on the construction site, digging mountains and rocks, and working all over the world. He lived simply, in a low thatched hut, and ate worse than the ordinary people. However, he is the most willing to spend money in water conservancy projects. Whenever there is a shortage of money to deal with the flood, he will fight for it himself. Yu decided to concentrate his manpower on flood control and cut a way through the mountains. Hard work damaged a piece of stone, wood, bone tools. People suffered even greater losses. Some were cut by rocks, some fell to their deaths. and some were swept away by floods. However, they still did not waver, and insisted on the mountain. During these hard days and nights, Yu the Great's face was tanned and he was thin and tired, even the hair on his calves was worn off, and the fingernails of his feet had fallen off because he had been in the water for a long time, but he still operated and commanded. Under his drive, the flood control progress was rapid. The mountain finally suddenly opened up, forming a confrontation between the two walls, the flood from 1,000 miles away, downstream flow. The river from now on, once, as he passed by his own house, he heard the crying of a child. His wife, Tu Shan, had just given birth to a son for him. He longed to go back and see his wife and child with his own eyes. According to the geographical situation of mountains and rivers, Dao divided China into 9 states, namely, Jizhou, Qingzhou, Suzhou, Yanzhou, Yangzhou, Liangzhou, Yuzhou, Yangzhou, Jingzhou. His method of water control was to treat the mountains and rivers of the whole China as a whole. He first managed the land of Kyushu, which should be draked and leveled, so that a large number of places became fertile land. Then he managed the mountains. The mountains he managed include Kishan, Jingshan, Lishao Mountain, Taiyu Mountain, Taihang Mountain, Wangguo Mountain, Changshan Mountain, Wuzhou Mountain, Jiaxi Mountain, Taiwa Mountain, Dabi Mountain, which is to dredge the waterway, so that the water can smoothly flow down, not to block the waterway. After the mountain road was cleared, he began to clear the water, leaving his mark on most rivers north of the Yangtze. He emphasized wisdom in water control, such as the control of Longmen Mountain in the upper reaches of the Yellow River. Longmen Mountain is to the north of Liangshan. Yu led the Yellow River from Jishi Mountain in Gansu Province. When the water was diverted to Liangshan Mountain, it was blocked by Longmen Mountain. Yu the Great surveyed the terrain and felt that the place had to be cut, but it was too big for Longmen Hill. Yu chose a place that would save the most labor and effort. He only made an opening 80 paces wide and directed the water across. Because the gantry is so high, many fish that come up against the water can't swim through it. Many fish desperately jump up, but only a very small number of fish can jump over. This is our descendants called carp jump long men. It is said that as long as can jump long men, immediately fish into a dragon flying in the air. It took Yu 13 years to control the flood. It was under his command that the roaring river lost its power and flowed gently eastward. The formerly flooded mountains emerged, the farmland became granary, and the people could build houses and live a happy and prosperous life again. Later generations appreciated his achievements, built temples for him, respect him as Yu God. Our whole China is also called Yu, that is to say, this is the great Yu used to govern the place. Because of this contribution, he was praised by the people and passed the throne to Yu, the national hero of flood control. The story of its flood control was first recorded in the Classic of Mountains and Seas, an ancient book full of myths. According to the field investigation of the Institute of Archaeology, Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, it is the largest Longshan cultural site found in the Huihe River Basin, with a total area of 500,000 square meters. Dao lived in the period of Longshan culture. There are not only the ruins of the Grand Assembly vassal, but also the ruins of the Tishan family, where the Chiefs was married. There are many ruins of Yu Palace, Kimu Stone also known as Wangfu Stone, Taisang where Qi was born, Fengzhong Mound, Yusu, and so on. The Yu Palace on the mountain has a history of thousands of years. The site is located on the east bank of the Huai River at the southern foot of Tu Mountain in the western suburbs of Benbu City, Anhui Province. When Yu finally completed his task, the court sent someone to fetch him and began to reward him for his service. Dao, however, refused on the grounds of fatigue and wanted to go home and enjoy a peaceful life. However, When he returned home, he found that his wife was no longer alive. In order to control the flood, his heart never put down the family care, so he lost his beloved one. After fighting the flood, Yu began a 13-year wandering career. When he finally returned home, he was old and frail. His last words were, "My strength is exhausted, I have not succeeded, the world does not believe my words, I will die." The story of Yu's flood control is not only a history, but also a belief and spirit. He continued to struggle and efforts, always did not give up the responsibility to himself and to the country, and finally completed the arduous mission. His courage, determination, perseverance, patience, integrity, self-discipline, persistence and other qualities have been inherited and become part of Chinese culture. The story of De Yu's flood control enlighten us that no matter at any time and under any circumstances, as long as we have a firm belief and strong sense of responsibility, we can overcome any difficulties and challenges. At the same time, it also tells us to keep calm when facing difficulties, and solve problems with wisdom and courage. The story of Yu's flood control is not only an important event in Chinese history, but also a cultural symbol and the crystallization of human wisdom. He has left a valuable legacy for future generations, reminding us to make unremitting efforts in life and work to create a better future.